Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Hemione Hudson, PwC UK's Head of Audit. And today I'm joined by Emma Smith from Vodafone and Francis D'Souza from Save the Children UK. And we'll be talking about the importance of delivering transparent, clear and insightful reporting. Both Vodafone and Save the Children were winners in this year's PwC UK Building Public Trust Awards. These are our annual awards that celebrate organisations that go above and beyond in delivering insightful and relevant reporting. Shortlisted companies and award winners stand out from their peers and demonstrate best practice reporting, and they lead the way in putting their clear purpose and strategic vision at the heart of their reporting and recognising the wider impact on all of their stakeholders. It's a real testament to the growing importance of trust and transparency and a huge appetite for best practice stories that we've had a fantastic list of well-known organisations submitting examples from Doc Martens, Great Ormond Street Hospital, Heathrow Airport, Lloyds Banking Group and lots of others. But Vodafone won the Cybersecurity Reporting in the FTSE 350 Award, and Save the Children were the winner of the Reporting in Charities Award. And we'll be discussing how they both approach their reporting, very different organisations, but I think really good stories and actually a lot of similarities about how they approach their reporting and the impact it's had and what they've learned. So, first of all, let me ask them to introduce themselves. So, Emma, do you want to start? And then Francis.
Hermione, thanks so much for the introduction. I'm Emma Smith. I'm Cybersecurity, Technology Strategy and Technology Assurance Director at Vodafone. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
And thanks, Hermione. My name is Francis D'Souza. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Save the Children.
Wonderful. So, Emma, let's start with Vodafone. You won the Cybersecurity Award and your submission was outstanding, and one of the judges declared that the reporting had convinced them to care about cyber reporting. I mean, I did wonder that, they should have cared about it before. But anyway, it was, really has made the reporting and frankly, for 3 years in a row. So, you have been outstanding for some time. So what has made, from your perspective, what do you do that really makes it stand out?
Well, we're delighted to win it and absolutely gobsmacked to win it 3 years in a row. So super pleased. And I was also delighted that they had the impact of making somebody really care about cybersecurity. So that's a big win. We've been working on our reporting over the last 4 years to try and really bring more transparency, because cybersecurity is quite a complicated topic. Many people, it's not core to what they do. It's a very strategic risk, though, that can impact all companies, all sectors, and without planning. So it's really important, we think, to make it simple, make it transparent, easy to digest, and take something that could be quite complex and sort of distill it down. The judges this year gave feedback to us around it being comprehensive but really accessible and readable, which I think is super important with these types of reports. And then we pushed ourselves on incident disclosure and sharing more around events that happen, because that's often the bit that people are fearful about in their annual reporting. And then we did things like a video of our chairman talking about cyber. So just trying to bring cybersecurity to life in many different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that really stuck out to me was the fact that you do so much on incident reporting and talking about kind of, where there are incidents, which people have been very hesitant about in the sort of cyberspace previously. And you also do a bit of a teaching for readers around actually, a kind of checklist on cyber. So, that theme of kind of transparency of reporting and things that haven't gone so well was a real theme that came across in a lot of our awards. Just talk to me about how you get everybody comfortable at Vodafone that you are going to talk about these incidents.
Well, it was back in 2020 that we decided to make a shift of the change in how we did the cybersecurity reporting, really to try and make it more transparent. And obviously there's a fine line to cross around what you share on cybersecurity, because it also could be risky to share too much for the wrong readers. And so we're very careful about making sure we focus on learnings that other people can take from our experience. So trying to bring to life from a practitioner point of view the things that people can learn, but then also being very clear on customers and the people that we're here to protect and serve, and making sure we're very clear about the impact on customers. And I think providing we do all of that, we do the fact check, we manage to get everybody comfortable doing it.
That's great. And cyber reporting is very prominent in your annual report. So, why is this a theme that is so important to Vodafone?
We see it as a strategic risk. We're a company that provides connectivity and digital services to society. Our core business is all about connecting people, and we see that cyber risk could impact how we serve customers and society, the many enterprises and companies that we serve, and as well as all the consumers. And so part of our ethos is all about transparency with how we serve customers and providing a great customer service. So in Vodafone, it's first of all seen as a strategic risk, but then it's seen as sort of underpinning how we build trust with customers. And so this award in particular means a lot because it's all about public trust, and we feel the same. We also know that people depend on our networks for personal reasons, for work reasons, and so maintaining good cyber resilience is sort of core and part of our ethos. And then we also think collaboration in cybersecurity is absolutely vital. And so how we collaborate cross-industry within our sector, outside our sector, with government, with law enforcement. And this is just a part of that strategy around transparency and collaboration.
Thank you very much, Emma. And Francis, let me come to you now, because actually similarly to Vodafone's report, your report really stood out to our judges for making them think about the issues you were highlighting and the transparency and actually what you think needs to change in society. I mean, it was really quite a sort of big picture reflection that I think our judges have. Tell us a little bit more about how you've achieved that and why it's so important to you.
Sure, Hermione. I think for us at Save Children, obviously, we work both in the UK and globally in sort of many, many different contexts and challenging environments. So I think for us, it's about actually, through our annual report, how do we actually show the broad range of the work we're doing and actually really bring it to life? I think sort of bring it to life, the readers of the report, to understand, what is the impact that Save Children is having on children's lives around the world. And I think the key thing in that broader piece is actually, how does that tie to the organisational strategy? And I think that key bit of sort of, what is your Save Children's organisational strategy, how we delivered it, and what's the impact we're having, but also the challenges we face in delivering our strategy. I think it's sort of really trying to bring it all together, so readers of the report, and which are many and various, have a sort of holistic view of what we're trying to achieve.
Yes, no, thank you. And again, the judges remarked on your push for honesty and transparency. And just as we were talking about with Vodafone and with Emma, you've sort of deliberately been quite honest about what hasn't always worked so well. Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure, I think that's key. Sort of Save the Children is clearly a charity, and we rely on funds from the public and institutions and corporates. And I think building that honesty, because I think people know that when you're a charity operating in places that we do, everything isn't going to go 100% right and as planned, if only life was that straightforward and simple. And therefore, I think it's about actually explaining what we're trying to do, explaining, in our report, we need to talk about the challenges or things where things haven't gone quite right, and trying to out sort of the learnings we've got to actually, how can we be better? Because it's always about trying to be better in terms of the impact we're having. So like I say, I think that piece is key for us for our annual report.
Yeah, I think it's a really good reflection. And I think this is the way that reporting is going. I think at times, historically, people have felt that it's about marketing. It's about trying to push, the best possible spin on organisations. But I think what really is valued by a lot of stakeholders is, can we get to transparent reporting? What are really the risks of the organisation, and how are you approaching them? So it's great to hear you both talking about that. Obviously, our awards are about building public trust. I think, Francis, there are clear reasons why, charities, the public needs to have a very clear sense of trust. And I'm interested in how you've seen that change and perhaps how you've responded to that in your reporting post-pandemic.
I guess post-pandemic, we're just in an acceleration of actually charities in particular ourselves of having to demonstrate the impact we have. For every pound we get, what are we actually achieving? Are we achieving great results for children around the world? Can we demonstrate value for money? And I think that is the bit that's accelerated through the pandemic, because we've got such a wide range of stakeholders, in particular the public and our volunteers and staff. But actually, how do you really demonstrate impact and what you've achieved? I think people are now, post-pandemic, more about actually what have you achieved than just sort of hearing about good works and good things, but actually seeing show me the details.
Thank you. And I think it's very much about who is the annual report being prepared for. So historically, the annual report was very much prepared for shareholders, and of course it is still primarily a shareholders document, but that's not really the purpose from a Save the Children perspective, particularly. And I'm going to come to Vodafone in a minute, but first of all, I think, Francis, be good to understand who do you see the primary stakeholders of the annual report?
I guess we just sit as a really wide range of groups. So whether it's the individual supporters we have who are donating, a few pounds every month, to corporates, to institutions, to governments, but also to our volunteers and staff. I think, the annual report is a really good opportunity to sort of showcase the work that, the organisation's delivered, primarily through its staff, but also its volunteers, and actually showcase that to the wider public of what we achieved. So it is a really diverse group of people we're trying to achieve, and through, like I said earlier, a diverse group of what we've actually tried to do. And I think that trying to, like I say, bring that all together and tie it together in terms of sort of consistent measures aligned to our strategy is sort of really key, though. So therefore, people can see what are we trying to achieve and what's our future trajectory.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And Emma, how have you seen the kind of focus for Vodafone on who is the annual report really aiming at, and which stakeholder groups are you thinking about when you're preparing your reporting?
And very similar to Francis, we think about a really broad audience. So there's obviously the shareholders, future investors, analysts, the core people you would expect to be interested in annual reports. But then we also think about our broad customer base, and writing in a way that anybody and everybody can understand the annual report, particularly the more technical topics. And then we think about regulators, and the regulation in this space around cyber, for example, is changing. And then we also find internal stakeholders use our annual report. So this year we created a cyber fact sheet, like a standalone, really nice to use fact sheet to sort of bring to life how we manage cyber risk. And we found that being used by internal colleagues, and then also with things like enterprise customers. So whilst we originally started out with a focus on investors, shareholders, analysts, and sort of building a connection and using this as a way of connecting externally, we found it's had much bigger readership. And many of our investors were asking questions about environmental, societal and governance topics. And that's what was part of the inspiration of making the changes about 4 years ago.
Yeah, no, thank you. And you mentioned you mentioned regulators as one of the groups that you are thinking about. And I imagine that a lot of our listeners will be thinking about regulation in the cyber environment. Can you just talk a little bit about, how you talked about regulations are changing? What do you think are the expectations of regulators now?
I mean, I think it still very much varies by jurisdiction, I think, in terms of regulations around cyber and security. But we've seen a big change with the SEC in America, the Securities and Exchange Commission, this year, where they came out and have now been very specific about cyber disclosures and how quickly they have to happen and based on the materiality. And they've also been clear that any organisation registered on the SEC has to also really go into detail about their processes for assessing cyber risk, identifying risk and how they manage it. So I think that listed companies have got those changes that are being driven by regulators. But I think increasingly, if you look across Europe or Africa, regulators want transparency around data privacy and how customer data or any type of consumer data in particular is being handled and protected. So I think we'll see a continued push for more and more transparency in a way that gives a real honest perspective of what's happening, and it faces into problems, just like Francis was saying.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emma. And I think another question I get a lot from organisations, and obviously, I'm an auditor. My whole career has been about financial reporting and about public reporting. Lots of people ask me, when should we be starting to think about what we're going to put in the annual report? At what point do you start preparing? So as a best-in-class reporter on sort of cyber reporting, the two questions I get asked a lot is, when should we be thinking about it? How early do you start the process? And secondly, how closely does it actually align with what you report internally on the same areas?
Shall I go first?
Yeah.
I mean, we're starting to think about the cyber content for next year's annual report. We publish our report usually in April, May. Our results close at the end of March. So we run a calendar year that runs to the end of March. So we're starting to think now, so 6 months ahead of the published date. And that's because if we don't do that, we won't innovate, we won't change, we won't adapt. You end up running sort of close to the wire and repeating and washing what happened last year. So we started to think already about next year's content. And then you made a really important point, I think, at the end of that question. Everything that goes in our annual report is a mirror image of what actually happens in real life. And it's very important. Everything that goes in the annual report is entirely based on reality. And so where we make adaptations in terms of how we manage cyber risk, we try and then lift that into our annual report to describe the journey that we're on in terms of how we're moving the dial on cyber. So we're probably 6 months in advance. We're very hungry to learn from other people. So we like to see the PwC results because we go and have a look at other companies, and the ones that have got other different best practice, we try and look at how we can learn from them. So I think 6 months ahead at least, and then we typically try and have the content done a couple of months before we publish the results.
Thank you, Emma. And I think that, thank you for reinforcing the point, because I do think it's really important that the external reporting actually mirrors what is the internal reporting and is linked up with that. And that's at the heart of what we mean by transparency, I think, is that we're not just doing this just for the external audience, but it actually does reflect what's happening in the organisation. So Francis, don't know if you've got anything to comment on that point. Or
I guess, interesting enough, we probably also start 6 months in advance of publication. That's sort of a myriad of the fact of trying to get the sort of structurally what are we trying to get across. But actually, it takes us a lot longer, given we're an international charity trying to get information from all parts of the world, and it just takes us longer to do it. I guess the bits which are similar to Emma is that sort of that forward planning, but also I think for us it's actually the messaging could change during the year, given we're reacting to, while we're proactive in terms of what we're doing, also reacting to things that are happening in the world. So therefore, as you get towards the end of the year, actually, what are the key achievements could change and shift. And I think to your sort of second part of that question of actually the end report really, to an extent, it needs to really reflect and be a live document as to actually what did we achieve, and it's sort of and it can change as we get towards the end of actually what are the key things that we wanted to land. But also it does align fully with our internal reporting. All the stories and things that we include in the annual report are things that we've shared internally with staff before. So it's not, it shouldn't be a separate product you're looking to make as a sort of good, but actually just showcasing hopefully what's the best to the organisation.
Yeah, and one of the things I really liked, I just wanted to pick up on that point, Francis, is that you've got some great case studies or showcasing, and a lot of feedback we get is those are people's favourite parts of annual reports, is that actually they love to hear the actual stories that bring to life what they do. And PwC, we have an annual report, and we have an annual report that is web-based. You can get to it on our website, and we can therefore track what are people's favourite parts of it. And absolutely, the case studies are the favourite part of our annual report. So just a word on maybe how you choose the stories that you want to tell, and what that means for the organisation as well.
I think it's similar. We don't have the tracking data for our annual report, but actually, anecdotally, people always talk about the stories, the showcasing, and actually, because like I said at the start of this, it really makes it come to life. Actually, how has the work we've done actually really impacted a child's life, or group of children, or schools, or regions, or the wider piece? And actually, while we could tell a story in our annual report, hearing it from people and hearing how it's impacted them, what it's achieved, I think is really key. I think we do spend time looking at, which ones we want to pick out. But like I said, that's very much linked to, what have we achieved, but actually, how does that fit within the wider strategy? Because the stories that we include in the case studies should hopefully speak to actually some of the bigger shifts we're trying to make in terms of the wider strategy and what we're trying to achieve. So like I said, it's about trying to bring this all together.
So in some ways it's a little bit, for you, those those positive stories are going to be the impact on a child's life or children's life somewhere. Emma, in your world, the sort of stories around cyber reporting might not be quite so positive at times because they might be responding to incidents and that sort of thing. How do you bring to life kind of what it's really meant in practice?
So we've tried three things over the last couple of years. One of them was we wanted to describe how we manage cyber risk in more real terms. And so we did videos of our real team talking about their job and what they do and how it fits into an operating model. And that was way more impactful than any sort of slideware or diagram. So a video of real people from the team talking about what they do and how it all fits together. So that worked really well. This year, we've done a fact sheet so that everything's in one place on cyber and not dotted around in the annual report. So bringing it all together, I think, has made it more easy to digest. And then we typically each year we've got something that we want to relay. So whether it's a message about the operating model or whether it's an incident or whatever, there's normally a core theme or it could be future advancements. So each year we build on that theme and try and think about the best way to share that information and try and innovate that way. We also use QR codes through the report so that people can use, hover on the QR code to go to video content, that sort of thing. So I think it's just about innovating the way the messages are shared as well as the stories that are told. You made me think about something on when you mentioned incident reporting. One of the learnings we've had is being very clear on the thresholds for reporting incidents and defining those in advance and agreeing them inside the organisation in advance and making sure they map with regulatory requirements. So that's been a really important learning for us over the last 5 years, I would say, is being very clear on minimum disclosure requirements and then deciding the criteria that we want to disclose on. So and I think having that set up front makes that annual process that Francis was describing much easier, because then if something triggers one of your criteria, you've got to go and adapt to what goes into the annual report. And it works very well with the external auditors as well doing that. So
brilliant. I think all of this is really showing the importance of tying up the internal reporting with the external reporting, what we are actually doing on a day-to-day basis, what our people are doing. And I loved both of you talking about, what real people in your organisations have done. And as I said, at PwC, that's very much what we showcase as well. It's kind of, the what our people have done and actually hearing it from them themselves is the piece that really engages our stakeholders. And I think that's so much, isn't it, about what reporting is around. It's how do you engage stakeholders in what matters to your organisation and what you're doing about it. So it's been really, really good to hear your thoughts on that. I think we are coming towards the end of our session, but I just wanted to give each of you the chance to give your final sort of top tips to achieving best practice reporting. So Emma, let me come to you first.
Well, I have to give a mention to our investor relations team. I think I would advise anybody in my position in another company to get to know your investor relations team really well and be on the journey together. So a lot of the innovation is a tag team between the IR team and my team. The second tip I'd say is a bit like cybersecurity, we see this as never finished. So we can always do more, we can always improve. Every year we want to push ourselves to keep adapting and changing, learning from others, seeking feedback, all of that good stuff. And then I think we touched on one of my top tips is that the consistency of what's in the annual report is so important, that it's a reflection of real life. It's really just translating what actually happens into digestible form for other people. And so it should only ever be a reflection of what really happens. And that's actually consequences of not doing that. So I think it's super, super important. And then maybe not the most exciting topic, but it's important to talk about how governance works. I think we've got feedback around how we govern and making that transparent. So especially in the risk management domain, how risks are governed and managed is an important thing to bring to life in the report. And then last but not least, be forward looking as well as backward looking. It's really easy in an annual report to only look backwards, but actually people want to know that you're thinking about the future, I think, when they read these reports. So an eye on what comes next.
Oh, thank you. Very good tips. And I love that ending with kind of how we look forwards as well. Very much important. Francis, your top tips.
I guess they're very similar to Emma's. I think, constantly looking to evolve your reporting. I think we've been shortlisted a few times for the PwC award, and it's great to actually finally won it. But I think it's a recognition of actually the evolution and the continual effort into trying to produce an annual report and make it really engaging, as you talk to, Hermione. And I think, I think we do, and I'm sure others do, look to others for inspiration, look to see what other people are producing. I think it's really interesting. I'm quite dull and sad. I find annual reports quite interesting. The fact you can read them and see what other people have said and done. But I think the key thing to me, though, is actually then tailoring it to your organisation, because the annual report needs to tell the story of your organisation, what you've achieved in the year, what's going to look like for the future, and therefore the historical stuff about sort of boilerplating, rolling forward last year's report, or just borrowing someone else's. Actually, you've got to think, is this true to us, and does it talk to our stakeholders? And I think for me that's key.
I totally agree with you, and definitely not dull and boring. I think, and there's a lot of really good content in annual reports, but any of our award winners, absolutely, it's a great read. So thank you both very much for joining me today. It's been a really good conversation. And for those of you who are listening, we have recorded this live, and you'll be able to find it on PwC's UK YouTube page. If you want to remind yourself of any of the tips or any of the advice that Emma and Francis have shared today. Thank you again very much, Emma and Francis, and congratulations again on winning the awards. And for everybody listening, thank you so much for joining us today. You can, of course, connect with us on LinkedIn if you'd like to. But for now, have a very good rest of the day. Thank you.